So the internet is filled with all kinds of quotes about people. Maybe Albert never said this, but you know, it makes sense. When we talk about communications and about giving a speech or a talk or a pitch, I actually say if you can do it without a PowerPoint, it's much better. Because people start reading things, there's lots of bullets on the screen, lots of images. Some people like to use flashy presentations. It zooms in, it zooms out. If you're not very well equipped at giving a good presentation, it's not going to be, I think, very effective. So if you want to use a presentation because it gives you some visual aids and it guides you through a presentation, it's good to use as background. So maybe we're not all experts at public speaking, but you're listening to talks. I talked to a really nice girl yesterday, and she said something about attending an international scientific conference, listening to a French woman speak, and she was terrible. Well, we've all, I think, had sat in some of those hour-long presentations with 300 slides, and it's really terrible because you don't know how long it will take for them to finish it. And there's no beginning, no end, 20 equations, very complex. This is obviously something to learn from, because you learn from good presentations, but you also learn from bad ones. So how should we talk to the public? And is it something even you want to do? Not everyone wants to also engage in media communications, for instance. A lot of companies and organizations that you may work for later on may also have communications departments and media training for you. So you might engage in also some communications directly with media professionals. So they would teach you how to answer in the correct way, how to repeat the question, how to not divert, because of course they're trying to engage in different topics. They would like you to maybe say something that in the end you might regret saying also. But this is not how we view the public as science communicators. We think using the media in an appropriate way, but also explaining to them, media professionals are very thankful and they want to know much more about how you develop, for instance, new technologies or innovations. They're very curious to understand how it will benefit society, what it will improve also. But if you are scared because you think, hey, the public, how should we talk to them? Is it that we have to simplify very much the message? This is not always the case. We don't talk to the public as if they're uneducated people who only understand layman's terms. Even people outside of the sector, maybe studying biology or social sciences, they're still professionals and they still understand the language that you speak, but you should try to understand that maybe the different acronyms that I saw yesterday on some of the posters are very technical, maybe for people to understand also this specific field of research. So I think it's good to understand that you explain it not to an 8-year-old, but you explain it to another professional. If you look at this, you see that it's a very different way how the public would view your presentation. They would like to know what's the bottom line of your research. In most cases, you will explain the background, you will explain the rationale behind it, why you started doing this research. And then you have some supporting details, results, and conclusions. But the public, all they want to know is, and so what? Why would this benefit us? Why would this be interesting for us to know? Then maybe after that they would understand and want to know more details about what you're trying to do. So what's important is, what's the goal of your message? If you're going to a scientific conference in Geneva, for instance, at one of those events, who is your audience? Always bear in mind who are the people that you're trying to talk to. Are they scientists in the room? Are they from your field of research? Are they outside of your field of research? And then what are the messages that you need to explain to them? And they should be key messages. They should be very simple. Use legible font also. So a serif versus a sans serif font would be much more easy to read. This all makes sense. But sometimes we still use different fonts that are very difficult to read, and also very small letters, for instance. I've seen some yesterday in the poster session as well. So bold letter fonts, of course, highlighting words. It's not always very legible. So if you're trying to present it, you would be surprised at some of the international conferences what people try to put in one slide. It's very, very packed with content. Also try to avoid using capitals. It's not very legible. This already helps a little bit more. And of course, for acronyms, yeah, this is very common. Font size. This is also very important to bear in mind what your audience can read, what they can understand. Especially maybe before you give a presentation, find out how big the room is, how many people will participate. If it's a small group, then it's of course a different story. But if it's really far, people are, sometimes there are conferences with 600, 1,000 participants. It's very difficult for them to see the screen. And there might not be any handouts. Use of colors also, I think, is very important to bear in mind. We've seen people, even our own rector at the university, he uses purple, yellow, it's crazy, green. And everyone looks at me because I'm, of course, head of communication. But yes, this cannot always be proved before. Give space in your slides. I've seen some very nice posters yesterday where people use a lot of white, really nice similarities also in titles. Use logos and pictures, but also make sure that there's a good resolution, otherwise don't use them. For smaller audiences, if you're talking to 6 people, give handouts. It doesn't have to be a very official presentation. Avoid too much animation. Sometimes everything comes flying in, it appears, it goes away. This is also very distracting. People will feel maybe a bit rushed or uncomfortable. So also look at the timing also of your slides, and try to give also some pauses so people will kind of understand. They will be able to absorb some of the information that you're telling them, especially if the talk is very scientific. Try to also look at the audience. You always have to separate a group in 3 categories. So when you talk, you have to really look at people, eye contact, so that they feel also that you're talking to them. It gives them some confidence that they're also really spoken to. Style and format. Use colors to highlight and organize, but also be consistent in the titles. Sometimes it's a different font, sometimes it's a different color. This is all confusing, so I think it's good to kind of maintain consistency throughout your whole presentation, even if it's 10 slides. Read through your presentation. The main points, what is that? What stands out? The headings, what or how? Is there a conclusion? It always helps to have it in the beginning and the end. Yesterday we were talking to Pierluigi, and he said at every end of every presentation he's seen, you'll always have a thank you slide. And of course, the thank you slide is when you have the question and answer session. So it will say thank you for maybe 15 minutes. Instead, you could also put a conclusion, or you could have something that people will remember. Which of course, yeah, that makes sense, but you should see how many people also use that. So of course, the speaker supports, meaning that the PowerPoint should only be an aid for your presentation. You should be the one giving the presentation. People should focus on what you have to say. If you use it too much, there are a lot of people who just look at the screen, they just talk from what is on the slide. But it doesn't really help when you talk, because people will lose focus on the actual message. So the key outline, what is the central question? What is the actual research that you wish to present? What underlying issue needs to be addressed? We're doing this research because, and divide it into logical, hierarchical sub-questions, perhaps. If you're asking these questions, also find answers to these questions, or say in future research, this is what we would like to address. And try to introduce one concept per slide. Sometimes there are 3, 4 ideas, but it's not very clear what you want to present. Also, how you say it matters, right? You have to slow down, give yourself some breathing time. Maybe, do you think accent matters if you speak? And also, listen also to how you say it. If you have a very monotonous voice, it will also be very difficult for people to stay focused. You can vary also in your tone of voice. You can alternate by asking questions. You can activate the audience, focus, try to see if they're paying attention. Speak up, not always you'll have a microphone. If it's a really big room, it's going to be difficult, of course, for everyone to hear you. And be enthusiastic, if you can, about your research. It helps a lot. Okay. On the internet, there are a various number of very good presentations about body language. I think this is very underestimated in many presentations, because people tend to forget that it really, I think, matters a lot how you speak. Of course, for the Italians, it's a natural, thing. But for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable, and they stand. It reveals a lot about how you feel inside. Also, try to catch your breath. Sometimes you want to speak too fast because you're nervous. Sometimes you try to focus, but you're losing it because everyone's staring at you. You feel very kind of insecure suddenly. So then take a moment. And sometimes you can even say, well, I'm a little nervous about this presentation, and everyone will see it's the case. And it's fine to admit that, but give them also some credit, because actually people in the audience, when they look at you, they want you to succeed in your presentation. Everyone will have this replacement fear for giving a presentation. Not everyone is comfortable. They will understand what it's like. So if they see that you're uncomfortable, but you're trying to mask it by speaking very fast, by walking up and down, it's going to make them more uncomfortable, I think. Some people like to use pointers, and they go like this, and everyone gets a bit dizzy. Not so good. Face your audience, look into the room, try to make eye contact with lots of people, so they feel that you're talking to them, so they stay alert. A lot of people forget that. They kind of look into one person, they kind of keep that person always in mind, but then you might lose the whole area on this side. They will be checking Facebook, they will be Twittering about other things. And you want them to focus, you want them to understand what you're saying, because it's important what you're saying. You've been working 3 years on this topic. You want them to know. And finally, practice. Who has ever practiced their presentation with peers, with people, before they presented?
Nobody.
No one practices. 2 people. 3 people. 3.5. Okay. Why is that? Can I ask you?
No, I really don't know because well, maybe
Speak up.
Okay.
We want to
Just
have
for now?
all your words into that machine there, so please speak up.
Okay, so
We've just been told to speak up. So.
yeah, okay. Maybe because I prepared my presentation in the last days. So
Like
Then
the
I-
minutes before.
Lack of time.
I didn't have any time to speak with other people to present my work. So
I understand.
Okay.
It's always a rush.
yeah, I'm in a
It's
rush. I'm in
tricky.
a rush. Yeah.
Okay,
But,
so it's very tricky because then of course.
Yeah, I know.
But then when you present it, how do you feel? Do you feel confident about the topic? Do you?
It depends. It depends on if I prepared very well my presentation. If I prepared very well my presentation, I'm confident.
Yeah.
I'm sure confident. But if I'm not,
So it's a time
I
management
could be
issue.
a little bit nervous.
It's fine to
And
be
maybe
nervous.
Play with the point.
With the point. Okay. I think what I would like to tell you is a little bit about giving feedback, because it's important that you receive feedback, but also that you give it to people who are in your group, in your colleagues, or maybe other people. I think it's really important that you focus on asking for feedback, because if you're asking for feedback and you're accepting feedback, other people will be more inclined to also accept your feedback. And it's really important, because otherwise you'll have no idea at all how it's received. So we will practice a little bit after this session. We'll have a mini break, and I'll point some people before the break to give a very mini pitch. What's a mini pitch? We will give you 2 minutes where you can present any topic of your choice to this audience. Why is that? Because I want your peers to be able to give you feedback on how you present. Because it seems very easy, and yesterday I've seen some excellent presentations, super impressive. So I think it's really great that if you do it well, you will succeed very much. It's a life skill. Communicating science, but just communications in general, if you're comfortable with it, it will help you throughout your life. Why? Perhaps you're a researcher at an international scientific conference and you would like to receive funding for a project that you're working on. And you're at this international conference, let's say you are at International Water Week in Stockholm, Sweden. Every year there's a big water conference. And you know that Bill Gates is there from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and he thinks it's great to put some more money in a sanitation-related research project, for instance. And you're working on this specific research project, and you think it would be great to meet him and talk to him. But then what do you say if you have 2 minutes, right? Also, it will help you in networking. How do you network? Why is it important to network? Why is it good to increase your network? It's very important that you increase your network because you will gain much more leverage, I think, within the scientific community. And I will show you
You want to move it to center? Press a couple of times green. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Okay, so I found this. She's a PhD student at the University of Western Australia, Jo Hawkins. Since we're recording this, I want Jo to know that we're using her excellent presentation on SlideShare, because she's herself a PhD fellow. And she said, you know, how should you tell your story? She's trying to help other people, her own peers also, in delivering a good pitch. So she's seeing a lot of things about misconceptions. A lot of people might say, people will steal my ideas, or they will criticize my ideas. She's encouraging academics to have an online presence. And she said, well, you can give yourself a competitive advantage, optimize search engine rankings, bringing research to life, global networking, creating a platform to promote your work, different types of benefits, basically. And she said, do blogs lead to increased dissemination of research papers? And she did this, she sourced this World Bank Development Research Group research paper. And she said, is blogging and tweeting about research papers worth it? Is anyone here blogging? Tweeting? Only Facebook, okay. And she said, 7 out of 10 of the most downloaded papers from my department in the last calendar year have me in the author list. 27 out of the top 50 downloads in our department in the last calendar year feature her. She said, my stuff isn't better than any of the works that her colleagues has done. But she's the only one actively promoting her work. So she gives more access, basically, by telling people about the research. She's talking a lot about impact, how to establish an online presence. So basically create a content platform and drive content and traffic, to that content platform. It's easier actually than you think. Much more than maybe trying to convince mainstream media to publish about your work. What's a good newspaper in Italy?
Good newspaper or scientific journal?
Newspaper.
Oh, then it becomes tricky because it tells a lot about your political orientation and I don't know.
Veniamo nel mondo di
So
parte.
it's sensitive.
Poi,
No, not necessarily. We can still ask.
Okay, so in the Netherlands, for instance, well, internationally, of course, you'd say, well, if you get published in the International Herald Tribune, New York Times, some of these, some of my colleagues say, well, it's great if you get mentioned there if they want to publish about maybe some of the work that you're doing. But then you cannot always influence media attention to your research. Also, sometimes maybe your research is not groundbreaking and new and super innovative, leading immediately to improved healthcare or anything like this. But still, it's important to publish, and it's important to also show other people working on this topic that you've done some excellent work. This is a way, I think, that you could help that. Well, this is just a little bit more about that. I think
There's a reference to this presentation in your slides.
yeah. Find the right tools for your communications. You don't have to use traditional methods. I think it's even easier for you to use Facebook. Twitter, LinkedIn is a very good platform for scientific conversations in groups. Other networks, for instance, I don't know if you know about the water issues announcement list. If you send out a message on this listserv, you will have, I think, 6,000 to 7,000 professionals in the water sector reading your message. So identify effective social media tools. Not everyone would like to work with Twitter, for instance. Not everyone would feel comfortable using maybe YouTube. But you can see how largely used social media tools are, especially at conferences, for instance. Of course, in the water sector, I think this needs to be encouraged much more. And of course, you work in development, you have a lot of different campaigns in water. So there's this water communication book that the International Water Association published recently. and it's an analysis of strategies and campaigns from the water sector. So it's actually very good to see different rankings, how they used basically different campaigns in different types of organizations. And what I would like to also leave you with is this handbook on communicating science effectively. And it's very helpful to integrate visual elements, diagrams like this. And it's for free to download. And I will also give you that link afterwards. I think it will be very useful. Who knows about this Facebook page? One person.
No, I do. Through you. I'm a bit shy to tell, but
Because there's the effort, of course. But it's fun. And look how many people like it. And it's massive. And it's very cool. The stuff they post is super funny. Everyone shares it. Everyone likes it. And it's pretty awesome, no? To have so many likes and so much interest, basically, in science from all kinds of people. Also, Science Done. They have a lot of interesting things. How old is music? Well, there are different types of very cool research done and presented. So, if you become a member of this Water Science Communications group, we will post much more also different types of resources that you could download or access, different films or links to publications or journals, or just online sites. Also, there's this website called thewaterchannel.tv, and it has a lot of films only about water and water-related topics. This could be a good resource maybe if you want to incorporate a film to illustrate your presentation. So that's pretty much it. I think I can now pick 3 people randomly. Everyone's trying to like not make eye contact.
mind the gender balance, please.
Okay, then we should pick 4 people.
I agree.
Okay, let me see who's very nervous.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendations?
No, I don't.
I think I would like you to present.
I'm leaving
Okay,
in 40
that's
minutes, but if I have time, it's fine.
okay. Well, we'll have a 20-minute break. So after that, you can start. And I think you. And you.
Franci, vai.
And you.
Ovviamente.
This is fate, no? Destiny today.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Before we stop for a break, I suggest the audience to make questions if they
Yes.
have any on all the things we've seen so far.
Veramente.
Particularly if you have any curiosity on and you want to go deeper in terms of tips on how to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. We saw a few good suggestions, hints at the beginning, or other things you've seen. Before we stop for a break, I would say let's if you have any questions, don't be shy.
As I said, it's all common sense. This all makes sense. But the thing is, when you prepare it, sometimes you forget. You just forget. And that's a shame, because it can be really awesome. You could have a very cool presentation. And I'm sure that you've seen Al Gore, for instance, talking about climate change, and you're captivated. You're sitting there thinking, wow, this man, it's amazing. Yes, climate change. We need to all be involved and do something. And this is kind of a great way to introduce a certain topic. Because in America, there is so much debate about climate change, whether it's real or not. There's still so much skepticism. But yes, this is obviously silly, and I will show you a video afterwards. But yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. Also in the break, maybe that's mentioned. So that's can be at 10 past 11. Is that okay?
10 past 11,
Is that 20 minutes?
non